White House counsel Don McGahn told President Trump back in January, CNN has learned, that he believed then National Security Advisor Michael Flynn had misled the FBI during their January 24th interview with Flynn and lied to Vice President Mike Pence. A source familiar with the matter told CNN today. This means that the president knew Flynn had potentially committed a felony when, according to then FBI Director James Comey, on February 14th, after the president had fired Flynn, he said to Comey, quote, "I hope you can see your way clear to letting this go, to letting Flynn go. He is a good guy. I hope you can let this go." Now, if the president was aware that Flynn had likely committed a federal crime when he made that alleged request, which the president disputes, that raises serious questions of potential obstruction of justice, though this morning, the president's lawyer, John Dowd, claimed such a thing was, by definition, impossible. In a new interview with Axios, Dowd said, quote, "The president cannot obstruct justice because he is the chief law enforcement officer under the Constitution's Article 2 powers and has every right to express his view of any case," unquote. In other words, the president is, according to Dowd, above this law. Kindly remember that one of then candidate Trump's pitches to voters last year was that the Clintons thought of themselves as above the law, but that he would be different.
No one will be above the law. We will have one set of rules for everyone.
That argument perhaps not as compelling with an asterisk and fine print, but the news that the president knew Flynn had misled the FBI before that alleged conversation with Comey began over the weekend, after Flynn, of course, pleaded guilty to lying to the FBI. Trump tweeted, quote, "I had to fire General Flynn because he lied to the vice president and the FBI. He has pled guilty to those lies," unquote. Now, the president's tweet prompted no fewer than 43 question marks from former director of the U.S. Government Ethics Office, Walter Schaub. He asked, "Are you admitting you knew Flynn had lied to the FBI when you asked Comey to back off Flynn?" And then multiple question marks. Now, if the president did know when he allegedly asked former FBI Director James Comey to halt his investigation of Flynn, then, according to Senator Dianne Feinstein, the ranking Democrat on the Senate Judiciary Committee, well, then
I think what we're beginning to see is the putting together of a case of obstruction of justice.
But wait, the president's lawyer, John Dowd, now claims that he is the one who wrote that potentially incriminating tweet, which might make understandable then his announcement today that no president can commit the act of obstruction of justice. Though, to be fair, this whole defense seemed to be somewhat in the works back in June when I asked a different Trump attorney, Jay Sekulow, whether he and the rest of Trump's legal team believed the president was incapable of obstructing justice.
You're talking about what's called the constitutional threshold question, and that is, can a president who has a constitutional authority to take a certain action then be prosecuted for taking the action? If there is an investigation, right now there's not, you would, of course, raise the constitutional issues. Any lawyer, especially those that do it at the Supreme Court of the United States, like I do, you raise the constitutional issue threshold. That's number one.
The Trump legal team is now raising that constitutional issue, regardless of the fact that such an argument is a complete contradiction from what candidate Trump promised voters.
No one is above the law. Clinton and her cronies will say anything, do anything, lie about anything to keep their grip on power, to keep their control over our country.
Again, we'll remind you, broken campaign promises are not a crime. But speaking of Clinton, it is worth remembering that in December 1998, the House of Representatives impeached her husband, Bill Clinton, and one of those two articles of impeachment was obstruction of justice. And of course, in July 1974, the House Judiciary Committee voted on bringing forth 3 articles of impeachment against President Nixon, and one of them was obstruction of justice. So previous Congresses, Democrat and Republican, have disagreed with these arguments coming from all the president's men. Though, see if this argument sounds familiar to you.
What you're saying is that there are certain situations, and the Houston plan, or that part of it was one of them, where the president can decide that it's in the best interest of the nation or something, and do something illegal.
Well, when the president does it, that means that it is not illegal.